My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. It is only natural that we want to pass on to our loved ones the wisdom we have accumulated. After all, we want those close to us to have a good life and avoid the many pitfalls that can crop up. An illustration of this universal instinct can be found in the story of a wise woman, Akoko, living in a remote Kenyan village a century ago. The time came for her to set out on a long journey by foot, accompanied by two nephews. As the three began their journey, Akoko started to recite the history of the people of Ramogi. The author of this enchanting story, Margaret Ogola, explains that this was not just a pastime, but a bounden duty. For the history of the tribe could only be transmitted by mouth from generation to generation. Else, how can you know where you are going unless you know where you are coming from? Therefore, any time that an elder was alone with a young person, he or she always recited the history of the tribe or clan. Our good mother, the Church, leads us along our lifelong journey to heaven. She passionately wants us to thrive on all levels. And so, year after year, she recounts in the Mass the story of Moses and the Israelites. In today's first reading, Moses passes down the marvels that he has received from the Lord himself and urges his listeners to observe and cherish all that he is transmitting. The content of his message is not only the history of the chosen people, but God's law for the entire human race. Now, Israel, hear the statutes and decrees which I am teaching you to observe, that you may live and may enter in and take possession of the land which the Lord, the God of your fathers, is giving you. Observe them carefully, for thus will you give evidence of your wisdom and intelligence to the nations. Just imagine the sparkle in Moses' eyes as he savors these words, knowing that they truly are the key to living life to the full. We need to treasure this gift of God, the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments, passed down from generation to generation. Those words are for us. Again and again, our Creator is saying to us that this is the way to have life with a capital L. Notice how Moses repeats the word observe. Just imagine the reverence and passion with which he pronounces that word. This is not an intellectual exercise or pure theory. He is saying, observe the statutes carefully, for they are the genuine source of life, the signposts that point you in the direction of the promised land. We need signposts to reach our destination. Imagine using GPS for directions and seeing on the screen the message, "You're on your own," or the single word, "freedom." Moses knew that the law he was passing on was a clear sign of God's love for each one of us. He says in today's reading, "The nations will hear of all these statutes and say, 'This great nation is truly a wise and intelligent people.'" For what great nation is there that has gods so close to it as the Lord is to us whenever we call upon him? For a Christian, the moral law is written on the human heart, and one discovers it. We call it the natural law, which guides us and every single human being along the paths of God's plan for man. You could call it, quote, the actual orientation of our own being, to use a phrase from Cardinal Ratzinger. Well, in recent centuries, the very notion of natural law has been called into question with deadly results. In our own times, people deny the very notion of human nature and insist on a so-called autonomy. They consider morality to be made by man. There is no natural moral law that flows necessarily from our nature, according to this vision of things. In fact, in this view, autonomy means self-definition. Each person has the right to determine their own values, their own meaning of life. Neither the state nor anyone else should interfere with their right to pursue that vision and to lead the life they choose. Therefore, all ways of life that do not harm others are equally acceptable and must not be criticized. However, we know from experience that to ignore the law placed within our very nature by the one who created us is a recipe for disaster. The eminent clinical psychologist, Dr. Jordan Peterson, spoke about the natural law in a forceful way. He was on stage in a lecture hall with a painting of Moses receiving the Ten Commandments in the background. He described his approach with patients who were suffering from tremendous internal tension. He helped them to go back in time, recalling one by one the unfortunate moral choices they had made. Finally, the patient was able to pinpoint the decision that had produced the original rupture with the natural law, that set everything else in motion. Dr. Peterson's conclusion, which he says in the lecture with great passion, is that it is impossible to get away with breaking the natural law without suffering dire consequences. Moses begs his people to remember. We read, "Take care not to forget the things that your own eyes have seen, nor let them slip from your memory as long as you live. But teach them to your children and to your children's children." Some years later, God reiterated the same message to Joshua, the successor of Moses, with these words, "Be strong and courageous, careful to do according to all the law that Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have success wherever you go." Mary, help us to earn the praise promised by Moses. This great nation is truly a wise and intelligent people. My mother, keep ever before our eyes all that your Son came to fulfill. Jesus, as you say in today's gospel, whoever obeys and teaches these commandments will be called greatest in the kingdom of heaven. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations that you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask your help in putting them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.